Welcome to Haunted Syntax. Here, we explore crimes, mysteries, and disappearances that continue to haunt us long after the headlines fade. These are not just stories of violence and tragedy, but also of people, ordinary people, whose lives were torn apart by circumstances beyond their control. We tell their stories with depth, respect, and reflection. Today, we examine one of the most unsettling cases in recent Philippine history, the disappearance of Elliot Eastman, a young American vlogger who embraced a new life in the Philippines, marrying into a Muslim family and choosing to live in one of the most dangerous parts of the country. A man who openly admitted to his followers that his life was at risk, yet still stayed. Then one night, his fears came true. Armed men stormed the house where he was staying, shot him, and dragged him away. To this day, his body has never been found. This is the story of a man who chased love into dangerous territory, of warnings unheeded, and of a disappearance that remains unsolved. Part 1, A Vlogger's New Beginning. Elliot Eastman was only 26 years old, a small-town man from Vermont in the United States. Like many vloggers, he wanted to share his adventures with the world. But unlike most, his adventures took him into one of the most volatile regions in Southeast Asia, the southern Philippines. Elliot had met a woman online, Carisha Jala, a Muslim from Cebuco, Zamboanga del Norte. Their connection was quick, intense, and for Elliot, transformative. By 2024, he had converted to Islam, married Carisha, and moved into her family's home in Cebuco. It was a bold step, one that astonished his viewers. On his YouTube page, Elliot described his life as being lived deep in the mountains of the Red Zone. The Red Zone wasn't just a dramatic phrase. It referred to areas marked by Philippine security forces as dangerous, places where foreign travelers were strongly warned not to go. These regions had long histories of armed conflict, kidnappings, and insurgent activity. For a young American to live there, openly, was extraordinary, and risky. Part 2, The Red Zone Reality. To understand the dangers Elliot faced, we need to understand the environment. The Zamboanga Peninsula and nearby Sulu region have, for decades, been plagued by conflict between government forces and armed insurgent groups. Some of these groups, like the notorious Abu Sayyaf, built reputations for kidnappings, ransom demands, and brutal violence. The Philippine government itself advises foreigners never to travel to these areas. Embassies, including the U.S. Embassy, list them as do not travel zones. For locals, these risks were part of everyday life. For Elliot, as a foreigner, his presence stood out. He was a target simply by being there. But Elliot was in love. He wanted to be with his wife. He wanted to prove he could adapt, live humbly, and embrace her culture. He learned the customs, dressed modestly, and began practicing Islam. He wasn't just visiting, he was trying to belong. Still, belonging did not erase the dangers. Part 3, Warnings and Foreshadowing. Elliot was not blind to the risks. In his live streams, he often spoke about his situation candidly. At one point, he told his viewers, "As long as I'm here, my life is still at risk. This area is like the most dangerous area in the country, literally the Red Zone." His words were unsettling. He said them with a nervous smile, but his voice carried a weight of truth. He knew. His subscribers urged him to leave, but he stayed. Perhaps for love, perhaps for pride, perhaps because he believed nothing would actually happen to him. Authorities, too, were aware. Local officials knew that a young foreigner living in such an area was vulnerable. He stood out. He was known. And in places where kidnapping for ransom was once common, his presence was risky. This mix of warnings, admissions, and unease feels almost prophetic now. Elliot himself seemed to sense that something might happen. And then, it did. Part 4. The night of the abduction. On the night of October 17, 2024, Elliot was at his in-laws' home in Cebuco. The evening seemed ordinary, until it wasn't. Around midnight, 4 armed men, dressed in black and impersonating police officers, forced their way into the home. They carried rifles, and their purpose was clear. Elliot resisted. He tried to fight back. In the chaos, he was shot, some reports say in the leg, others suggest he was also struck in the abdomen. His blood spilled across the floor. Neighbors heard shouts. His family pleaded. But the attackers showed no mercy. They dragged Elliot out of the house, down toward the shoreline, and loaded him onto a speedboat. Within minutes, they were gone, disappearing into the dark waters of the Sulu Sea. For his wife and her family, the nightmare had begun. For Elliot, wounded and helpless, the journey to an unknown fate had started. Part 5. The immediate aftermath. When police arrived, the signs of violence were clear. A trail of blood led from the house to the shoreline. Inside, investigators recovered a spent M16 shell casing, evidence of the shots fired. Elliot's phone and belongings were left behind. But Elliot was gone. And in that moment, nobody knew if he was still alive. His abduction triggered a massive response. The Philippine National Police, military units, and Coast Guard were alerted. Checkpoints were manned, patrol boats sent out. But the waters and jungles of that region are vast. By the time authorities mobilized, Elliot and his captors had vanished. Part 6. The search for answers. As days passed, speculation grew. Who were the kidnappers? What did they want? In typical kidnapping cases in the region, ransom demands are made within hours. Families are contacted, conditions are set. But in Elliot's case, no ransom calls ever came. His family, his wife, and even U.S. officials heard nothing. This silence made the case more ominous. Was it really a kidnapping for money? Or was it something more sinister? Part 7. Theories and motives. Authorities explored several theories. 1. Elliot was targeted as a foreigner, presumed to have money, and kidnapped for ransom. But the lack of demands weakened this angle. 2. It was a personal vendetta. Elliot's marriage, his online presence, or cultural tensions may have angered someone. Living in a tight-knit community as an outsider, his visibility may have attracted resentment. 3. It was the work of insurgent groups like Abu Sayyaf. Their methods, armed men, disguises, speedboats, matched the attack. These groups had a history of abducting foreigners, sometimes killing them when negotiations failed. Without clear evidence, all remained possibilities. Part 8. Shifting toward tragedy. Weeks went by with no word. Then months. By December 2024, police began to conclude what many feared: Elliot was likely dead. Investigators suggested he may have bled to death from his gunshot wounds during the abduction. One suspect reportedly confessed that Elliot had not survived the journey, and that his body had been disposed of at sea. But without a body, his death could not be confirmed. For his family back in Vermont, that uncertainty was devastating. For his wife in the Philippines, the grief was doubled by the lack of closure. Part 9. The body that never returned. The sea can erase evidence. Bodies thrown into its depths often never resurface. Forensic proof disappears. Without remains, loved ones are left with endless questions. Did he die immediately? Was he alive for hours, suffering? Was he betrayed by people he knew? The absence of a body makes Elliot's case even more haunting. It denies finality. It denies answers. Part 10. The impact and legacy. Elliot's disappearance resonated far beyond the Philippines. For Americans abroad, it was a stark reminder of the dangers of ignoring travel warnings. For locals, it highlighted ongoing issues of lawlessness in certain regions. For his viewers, it was a chilling end to a story they had been following in real time. On his YouTube channel, the comments remain a mixture of sorrow, disbelief, and frustration. Videos of Elliot smiling, laughing, and talking about his new life now feel like echoes of a ghost. His words about living in the red zone play like a premonition. Part 11, a reflection on risk and love. Elliot's story forces us to ask, how far would you go for love? He married, converted, and chose to live in his wife's community. His decision was bold, but also dangerous. He risked everything to belong. But love does not erase violence. And in places where danger is real, choices have consequences. Part 12, final thoughts. The case of Elliot Eastman remains unresolved. His body has not been found. His family continues to grieve without closure. His subscribers remember him through his videos. And the people of Cebuco live with the memory of the night when strangers came and took him away. This is more than a crime story. It is a reminder of human vulnerability, of risks underestimated, and of the shadows that linger in regions marked by conflict. Elliot's disappearance is a story of warnings ignored, of danger made real, and of a young life lost too soon. Thank you for staying with us through this story. This has been Haunted Syntax. If you want more true crime documentaries that honor the victims and confront the mysteries that still haunt us, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next story.